The receipt trembled in his hand as the twins were led away, their fingers still clutching each other's sleeves. A birthmark caught his eye. His chest tightened. Memories surged. Something about this moment felt impossible to ignore, as if the past had just stepped out of the shadows and asked to be recognized. Before we go any further, if stories like this move you, take a second to subscribe to Kindness Tales. These are the moments that remind us who we can be when we choose compassion. Share your thoughts in the comments and pass this story along to someone who believes kindness still matters. He was known in business magazines as a young billionaire who built a logistics empire before 30, the kind of success story people admired from a distance. He lived in a glass-walled house overlooking a quiet California hillside, drove himself to work, and kept his circle small. What the articles never captured was the weight he carried quietly, the ache of a family that never quite formed the way it was supposed to. His wife had died years earlier, and with her went the dream of children. Doctors had told him he would never be a father. He accepted that with the same discipline he applied to everything else. Or at least he told himself he did. On a rainy afternoon in downtown San Diego, his driver had taken a wrong turn, forcing them past an old warehouse district near the river. At a stoplight, he noticed two small figures huddled under an awning, holding a cardboard sign that read simply, "Hungry." They were girls, maybe 6 or 7, their hair tangled, shoes soaked through. Something about the way they leaned into each other stirred him. He rolled down the window and asked the driver to pull over. He approached slowly, careful not to frighten them. Up close, he saw identical faces, wary eyes that had learned too much too early. He offered them sandwiches from a nearby cafe and watched as they ate with practiced speed, never letting go of each other. An older woman hovered nearby, eyes sharp, hands impatient. She explained quickly that the girls were her stepdaughters, that their father had died, that she couldn't feed them anymore. Her words felt rehearsed, her gaze calculating. As he listened, the girls stayed silent. One had a faint crescent-shaped birthmark just below her ear. He felt a strange pull toward it, a tug at a memory he couldn't place. When he asked their names, the woman cut in, answering for them. When he asked about school, she shrugged. The rain kept falling thin and cold. The woman leaned closer and lowered her voice, saying she would let him take them if he compensated her for the trouble of raising them. It was said casually, like bargaining over a used couch. His stomach turned. He knew this wasn't a simple exchange, that it brushed against something dark and illegal. But he also knew that walking away meant leaving the girls here. He told her he would not give her cash, not like that. He would contact social services, arrange proper custody, ensure the girls were safe. She scoffed, muttering that paperwork took too long and hunger didn't wait. He made a call anyway. A local non-profit he supported rushed a caseworker to the scene. The woman grew agitated, then suddenly eager, signing forms with shaking hands once she realized there would be oversight. The money he provided went directly to a court-monitored account to cover emergency care and legal fees, not to her pocket. When the caseworker gently led the girls toward the van, they looked back at him, eyes wide, as if asking whether he would disappear too. He promised he wouldn't. In the days that followed, he couldn't focus. Meetings blurred, numbers lost meaning. He checked his phone constantly, waiting for updates from the caseworker. The girls were placed temporarily in a foster home. While the courts assessed the situation, their stepmother vanished from contact. The girls had no mother listed. Their father's records were sparse. It was as if their history had been erased. He volunteered to cover medical exams and counseling. At the pediatric clinic, he sat in the hallway while nurses weighed and measured them. When the doctor mentioned a distinctive birthmark common in a certain family line, his heart skipped. He had seen that mark before in the mirror on his own neck. The coincidence felt too loud to ignore. That night, he pulled out a box he rarely opened. Inside were letters, old photos, and a hospital bracelet from a day long buried. Years ago, when his wife was alive, they had been expecting twins through a surrogate. There had been complications, confusion, and then devastating news. He was told the babies didn't survive. He had never been shown bodies. He had never asked for proof. Grief had made him obedient. He requested DNA testing under the pretense of medical necessity. The waiting nearly broke him. He visited the girls at the foster home, bringing books and puzzles. They warmed to him cautiously, laughing when he pretended not to understand the rules of a simple game. One evening, as he helped them wash paint from their hands, one asked if he would come back tomorrow. He said yes and meant it with everything he had. The results arrived on a quiet morning. The caseworker's voice trembled as she spoke. The girls were his. The room seemed to tilt. Years of loss collapsed into a single overwhelming truth. Somewhere along the line, a crime had stolen his children and sold them into a life of neglect. Anger flared, then softened into resolve. What mattered now was what he did next. The legal process was long and painful. Investigations uncovered a network that had exploited vulnerable women and children. The girl's stepmother was arrested. Courtrooms became familiar. Through it all, he kept showing up. He learned how to braid hair, how to soothe nightmares, how to answer hard questions without lying. When the judge finally granted him full custody, the girls ran to him, wrapping their arms around his legs, laughter spilling out like it had been waiting for years. He transformed his home not with luxury but with warmth. Bedrooms painted soft colors, a backyard swing set, a fridge covered in drawings. He adjusted his work schedule, turned down deals that would take him away too long. He read bedtime stories and packed lunches. At school pickup, other parents recognized him from the news, and then forgot all about that as they watched him kneel to listen to a story about a lost tooth. The girls carried scars, but they also carried resilience. Therapy helped. Time helped more. On weekends, they volunteered together at the same non-profit that had helped them, handing out meals, smiling at people who reminded them of where they'd been. He never hid their past from them, but he didn't let it define them either. They were kids who loved soccer and pancakes and terrible jokes. Years later, standing at a school assembly where the girls spoke about kindness, he felt a quiet awe. They talked about the man who stopped on a rainy day, who saw them, who chose to help when it would have been easier to drive on. They didn't mention money. They mentioned listening. They mentioned staying. Kindness doesn't always look like grand gestures. Sometimes it's a car pulling over, a question asked, a promise kept. In this story, kindness rewrote a future that had been stolen and returned it to where it belonged. If this touched you, share a moment when kindness changed your path, or when you chose to be that moment for someone else. You never know who is waiting under an awning, hoping to be seen, and how one simple act can become a lifetime of belonging.